start with the soil. It is the engine of agriculture, quietly growing the grass that feeds livestock and, ultimately, us. Looking at a misty pasture at dawn, the environment feels entirely stable. Then, that stability shatters. A farmer walks out in the morning and finds a healthy cow lying dead in the grass. There was no lingering illness, no coughing, no lethargy, and no drop in milk production the day before. The animal was fine at sunset and gone by sunrise. When you lose livestock overnight without a clear cause, your first instinct is to find out why. You naturally want to examine the body, figure out what happened, and protect the rest of your herd. The standard veterinary protocol for a sudden, unexplained death is to perform a necropsy, essentially an animal autopsy. You examine the internal organs for hidden defects or toxins. But if you pause and look closely at the scene, the physical evidence suggests something different. Looking at this decomposing carcass, the biological breakdown has progressed at an incredibly accelerated rate, reducing the animal to skeletal remains much faster than normal. Then there is the physical signature, a thick, dark fluid that looks like blood but refuses to clot, slowly oozes from the nose, mouth, or other orifices. If you see these signs, you must stop immediately. Do not touch the animal, and do not cut it open. Performing a standard autopsy here will not provide a solution. Slicing into that carcass triggers a biological chain reaction, releasing a threat that can infect your land for generations. The bacterium responsible for this sudden death is Bacillus anthracis. Looking at this image, under harsh stress, this pathogen condenses into a tough, armored oval structure, a spore. These hardened shells are nearly impervious to extremes, lying dormant in the dirt for up to 70 years, waiting for a host. The cycle begins when a grazing cow or sheep accidentally swallows a dormant shell. Once inside the warm, nutrient-rich host, the armor breaks open. Looking at this microscopic slide, you can see what follows. The spores transform into these active, long, rod-shaped bacteria, flooding the bloodstream and releasing toxins. Inside the dead animal, these active bacteria are quite fragile, but the moment you slice the carcass open, you expose them to outside air. Oxygen acts as the biological trigger that forces them to instantly harden back into indestructible spores, seeding the soil with decades of future infection. This pathogen does not limit itself to livestock. Anthrax is a zoonotic disease, meaning it can jump from animals directly to humans. If a handler touches infected blood, meat, or hides with bare hands, the bacteria enter through tiny cuts in the skin. This causes cutaneous anthrax, which presents as a severe, black-centered ulcer. A more severe threat occurs if a person breathes in dormant spores from contaminated dust. Looking at this chest X-ray, the clouded, opaque areas in the center show the massive respiratory damage caused by inhalation anthrax. Inhalation anthrax carries a high fatality rate and requires a massive biohazard response from medical teams operating in full protective gear. Leaving the original carcass sealed is the primary firewall. That restraint prevents a farm accident from becoming a public health emergency. Since you cannot safely investigate the body yourself, you must secure professional help. The first step is calling a licensed veterinarian to manage testing and isolation. Once confirmed, the carcass must be permanently deprived of oxygen. Protocol requires burying the animal undisturbed at least 6 feet underground, isolated from scavengers and surface water. To destroy the bacteria before they can form spores, the body is completely covered in calcium oxide, or lime, before burial, or it is entirely incinerated. Following these disposal protocols ensures the bacteria die trapped inside the host. This breaks the cycle of infection and protects the land. Securing the dead stops the immediate spread, but you still must protect the living herd from any dormant spores already resting in the pasture. The most effective defense is an annual anthrax vaccination for all grazing animals. While it requires an upfront investment of time and resources, vaccination acts as a reliable biological shield against a hidden environmental threat. Through strict protocols, scientific intervention, and constant vigilance, we can manage this ancient pathogen. We can ensure the ground beneath our feet remains a source of sustenance, keeping these dormant spores securely isolated from the living.